to Marketing Mondays. I am back after a while of being off from paternity leave. And funny enough, today is actually my daughter's fifth birthday. And I was talking to Adriana, and she said, Arthur is doing Monday. And I said, you know what? I'm going to come, even knowing it's my daughter's fifth birthday, so I could spend the time with Arthur. So I am super excited. For those that don't know, I have Arthur Castillo, who is I'll let him introduce himself. He's at Chili Piper. He's doing all these cool things. But the goal of today's session is talking about winning with community in dark social, something that Arthur knows better than most. I am also super passionate about that. So, Arthur, I will let you introduce yourself.
Amazing, man. And I'm sorry I get to steal you away from your daughter. We'll get you back in no time. Hello, everybody. Arthur Castillo here, head of dark social and evangelism at Chili Piper. Um, and I'm super excited to be on this with Nick. I know we've done a couple of things together. We have a newsletter, we have a community, so I'm sure we're going to touch on all of that and more. So yeah, can't wait to get started with this and see some of the questions from the audience on what they have around this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you do have any questions, make sure to drop them either, if you're on the LinkedIn Live, make sure to drop them in there. If you're listening within the event itself, make sure to drop them in here. We are open. Arthur is happy to answer anything that comes his way. So we will make sure to kind of tackle all those. We'll make it interactive. We don't want to make this boring. We don't want to make it all about myself and Arthur. We want to get everyone else involved. And that's what makes a great event. So, the goal of today is really to deep dive into the world of community, dark social, explore how these channels will supercharge your marketing strategy. So, before we get started, I know there's a lot of talk about dark social. What is dark social? Is it the same as the dark funnel? So, Arthur, let's kick things off and tell everyone in your mind, in Chili Piper's mind, like what is the definition of dark social?
Yeah. And I will say I've kind of changed my tune around this recently, right? So before I would have been like, hey, it's just another rebrand of word of mouth, right? This has existed. The biggest difference being the frequency at which it happens and the access that we have to our peers, where we can literally message them one to one. Whereas before, maybe that happened once or twice a year at some big annual conference where you can actually discuss challenges and opportunities. Now, where I've started changing my tune is actually in how people are going on this buying journey and self-educating themselves. And I'm sure you've seen this a ton, Nick, in terms of self-reported attribution. But when you ask people, how did you hear about us? You might hear something like, I saw Nick Bennett post on LinkedIn about this topic. Actually, I've been following Nick Bennett for 4 years. And when he made the switch to Airmeet, I was excited to see what he was up to. I heard you on a podcast. Somebody mentioned you in a community. I've spoken with 3 of my peers and they all said you were the de facto tool. So if you look at how people are actually discovering it, it's through this guided self buyer's journey where they're consuming content. And I think the root of it is it's all through content. And I see communities in dark social being a way to get that content in front of your buyer and maybe start to change their tune on the status quo, right? People are getting the job done. They're getting from point A to point B. It's not like you're going to come in and say, hey, you're probably not doing this and I have a cool way to do it. Just disrupting that a little bit, right? And maybe shining a light of like, okay, this is how people typically do it, but this might be how Nick does it. This might be how Adriana does it. This might be how Jared Robin does it. And getting them to think a little bit differently. So to recap, I would say it's it's the phenomenon that's happening right now where we have access to our peers and the frequency at which we can have access to those through different channels like communities like RevGenius, LinkedIn. I know it's a social media platform. I'm starting to even think of this as a community because people show up day in and day out. They drop knowledge, people engage with others, they comment on their posts. So to me, LinkedIn is one of the best communities out there. And then obviously the dark piece being that the marketing attribution software can really only tell you that last touch, and it heavily influences that last touch point, gives it all the credit, says that's where the demand was generated and captured. So that's the piece of marketers coming to the understanding that software attribution can only take you so far. We have so many different channels and ways of people discovering your brand, and it's pretty tough to determine where exactly that demand was generated. So this is the phenomenon of dark social.
I love that. That's such a good recap because I feel like there's still some people out there that will be like, "Oh, isn't it just like word of mouth, like 2.0?" And I feel like you've kind of demystified some of that and explained like your viewpoint on it. And you bring up like the community piece because I agree, like LinkedIn is definitely a community. I feel like as a creator, just like yourself, and kind of you build a community on LinkedIn, and it's just like the people that you engage with. And I wrote a post about this recently. I said, are people brands? And I mean, there's a thing as a brand, and then there's your personal brand, stuff like that. But ultimately, there's people that just I'll take you for example. There's people that I've engaged with for a while, and obviously we've met a few times now. But like before we met, I felt like we knew each other, and it was just like I feel like that's kind of where the community piece comes in. And we've talked about business before. I've talked about Chili Piper. We talked when I was at Alice, like we talked about stuff like that, and like it just made more sense. And then when we got together, it was like we were just continuing that conversation, like we've known each other for years. And I think that's where LinkedIn has become a really important community to people because especially in today's world and unfortunately how the economy is handling and all of the layoffs that are happening in tech, people turn to communities like RevGenius and all these other communities to not only level up both like professionally but also personally to build those relationships with people. Because let's just say I get laid off today, unfortunately. Hopefully that doesn't happen if anyone's listening. But first call I'm going to make is to Arthur. I'm going to be like, yo, Arthur, I got laid off. Can you help me with some introductions or whatever? And like Arthur's gonna be like, yeah, like for sure. Like, let me know who you want access to. And I think that's where the big piece where these communities come into play too. And I'm curious, like, I know we talked about self-reported attribution, and I am a big believer in that. But like, what about the dark piece when it comes to just like relationships? Because I feel like there's a like there's a piece that goes on where we're talking and we're doing different types of things and like we're helping each other out, and it goes like it's still dark because stuff is happening, but we're not driving business. But who knows what that could lead to down the road? So like, what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's such a good point, man. And I think we have been guilty of it in both sales and marketing of this idea of like direct response, right? And everything has to lead back to business outcomes. I would argue, Nick, that a lot of our success has come from just setting up the foundation of these relationships to build off of that. And I think the best way to frame it in terms of a mindset, and I think you can take this with you in really any position you have, is this concept of withdrawals versus deposits. I first heard it from Josh Braun, and I think the approach we're taking is we are depositing, right? Different valuable pieces, whether it's helping people connect people that just got laid off. I know there's been a tons of texts that we've gone back and forth being like, hey, this person's on the market, they're awesome. And then in some cases we've helped them set up interviews. But as a result, I'm sure later down the line, if you have to maybe withdraw from that person or that company, they're going to remember who actually helped them get those interviews or who even helped them get that job. So I love this concept and this idea because I think so often we're always reaching out to other folks, being like, "Hey, do you want a demo?" Or "Hey, can you do this for me?" Or "Hey, can you do that for me?" But I think we really take this approach of like, "Hey, what can I do for you?" Or "Hey, I noticed something and I thought that'd be interesting." Even tagging people in some of these conversations, right? Getting their thoughts. Oh, this person's an expert on this topic. Boom, put them there. So I mean, obviously, I prescribe to this, but I think a lot of folks can start changing their mindset of playing the long game and knowing that doing something for somebody because it's the right thing to do and hoping in the future that karma comes back and it pays off. I know it has for me. I'm sure it has for you. And I don't know. It's just the approach I prescribe by. And I think a lot of people will be able to build relationships and a solid foundation to actually doing business later down the line. But what do you think, Nick?
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I think it's, I mean, I'll take everything that I've done. Like I've been posting consistently on LinkedIn for 3+ years now, and like for the majority of the first, I would say 2 to 2.5 years, I literally didn't ask for anything. I wasn't trying to sell courses. I wasn't trying to monetize anything. I was literally just trying to provide value. I was trying to provide value as a community on LinkedIn. I was trying to provide value within RevGenius. I was trying to provide value in like the work that I do with like the companies that I work with on a regular basis. And it got to a point where it just continued to grow. And then there was times where, I'll take, my podcast, for example. Like I had to look for sponsors, and now I was reaching out to people, and every sponsor that I have right now, I mean, you could kind of look at it as like the community side. Like they all came inbound. I didn't go out, like I'm not out there prospecting or anything like that. And it goes because I was just trying to give, give, give. And then I did have to ask. And people were like, yeah, cool. Like, hey, you know what? Or they would at least get back to me, say, hey, this isn't a fit right now. Normally I would ignore outreaches like this, but because of you, because I see everything that you do for the community, I'm at least willing to just be like, hey, this isn't a great fit for right now. And I think that's just an important life lesson that you're supposed to give more than you take. And
Yeah.
it's interesting that some people don't prescribe to that mindset, and I don't know, it's just something where some people have it and some people don't, but we'll see. It's definitely interesting to see how it kind of will progress. But I did have something on the dark social side that made me think, and it goes back to like modern day marketing. And I feel like there's a lot of modern day, or there's a lot of companies that don't subscribe to modern day marketing. And dark social is just one aspect of it. I mean, I think the creator economy is another piece. I think there's a lot of different aspects that go into modern day marketing. And if you were trying to get buy-in from, I mean, I know your company obviously is 100% in on this, but if say you went to a company that had no clue what dark social was, had no clue what evangelism was, what community meant, how would you actually get them to buy in to this modern day mindset?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think the answer that most people probably say is, "Hey, take a look at some of your past purchases, right? Whether it's B2C or B2B, and just try and dig in and understand, when did I first hear about that company, or have I spoken to anybody that's actually recommended it?" And you'll probably get a couple of data points there. But I'm cognizant of the fact that sometimes, like when you're trying to prove something, it might not be the best to ask the person you're trying to prove to kind of look back and reflect, and get them to see it from your side. So to me, my mind goes to customers, right? If you can actually interview your customers and get them, now this obviously has to happen maybe within, I'll say 30, 60, 90 days of the purchase. So it's still fresh in their mind, but just start documenting that and saying like, okay, when did you first hear about us? Did you speak with anybody around us? Did you ask for any recommendations? Did you speak with a referral? How many customers of our product did you speak with before? Right? Having these set amount of questions that you could quickly ask 5 or 6 customers, and then you take that data and say, look, all of these people signed on within the past quarter. Now, our attribution software tells us organic search, right? They were searching for Chili Piper in Google. But look at all of these responses where they first heard about us. It's probably, it'll shock you, but it might be 2 or 3 years ago, right? And nothing really happened, but you're on their radar. Or maybe they heard a peer that they really respected recommend you, or maybe shout you out. And so you're slowly starting to move people across this buyer's journey and arming them with the info that they need in order to, I guess, go down that purchasing process. But I think also to get them to think a little bit differently about their situation. And that's probably the trigger point that gets them to finally reach out. But it might be years of putting in, yeah, value added content, of these deposits before you see something come out. But back to the question, if you're going in and your executive team is saying, I don't know, I don't necessarily believe it. To me, if you can just quickly interview 5 or 6 customers, use some of those questions, right? Of when they first heard about you, did a peer recommend it? How many channels did they see you across before they actually went in? and getting a little bit of data points there to say, hey, don't take my word for it and don't even look back on your own purchases. These are customers within the past quarter that have signed on. And you can see that we can't put all of this attribution on one single touch point. There was just a journey of touch points that they had to go through in order for them to actually take that next step and become customers. But yeah, I'm curious if you have any recommendations outside of self-reported that you've proven this out.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, it was similar customers as well. It's, I always use the stat that I was able to drive $2 million in pipeline when I was at Alice for
Yeah.
2 years, and using self-reported attribution. Now, there's I'm sure lots that we just didn't capture, but I mean, I'll give you another good example at Airmeet. Like, so many people didn't know that Airmeet existed because we were based outside of the U.S. And so when Mark Killens, who's our CMO, came on board, he's been here for about a year now, and when I came on board, it's crazy how many people reach out to him and I. It's just like, I never knew you guys existed before the both of you came in, or like, hey, I didn't know you did this. Like, wow, I'm seeing you guys everywhere now, and like, I've been here since I think February. So what is that, like 3, 4 months? And so I've already been able to close 2 deals that came from me that I source through just relationships that I've built that were from, funny enough, target accounts. And it was just it's crazy. At one, you the sales team starts to love you at that point because they're like, hey, do you know this person? Or hey, do you know this person? Um, and it becomes really easy to paint that picture to your leadership team. But when you have a CMO like Mark, who's bought in on, again, modern day marketing and the vision and dark social, and he gets all of this, it makes that conversation a lot easier because then he's going to our CEO and being like, listen, this is what we need to do, versus like just some random person on the marketing team saying this is what we should do and like here's why we should do it, but no real evidence supporting it. And I think that's what makes a big difference, and that's why, like, some leadership teams don't get marketing, some leadership teams do get marketing. And I think it's finding a CMO or VP of marketing that works with you, that really subscribes to this type of thing.
Yeah, 100%, right? The never work for a leader that doesn't get marketing comes from CEOs, comes even from the maybe the older school CMOs that are still running gated ebooks and different old outdated campaigns. So it's a good call out. Like if this is a worry, and I realize this question might come from somebody that is going through this right now, but yeah, doing your due diligence before you dig in, or even getting them, hey, what's an example of good marketing? Tell me what, like, something that you really enjoyed or thought was like powerful, whether it's B2B or B2C, maybe an example of each. And then you can start to understand how they really think about marketing, right? No, I guess I'm going back to my sales skill set, but no yes, no questions. It's very easy to either say yes or no, get them to expand on their thoughts. Tell me about a marketing campaign that you thought was really awesome in the B2B space. And I
Yeah.
think that'll give you insight into how they start to think about marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a question that came in. I know it doesn't. We're both of us aren't in the supply chain area, but maybe we can answer it from like I guess a higher level lens. But it's suggest a marketing strategy for a SaaS based supply chain company. Um, I mean, I have some thoughts. I'll throw it to you. And I mean, maybe the question is, oh, B2B. Okay. Maybe it's around like just different types of activities to do to activate dark social. Is that maybe, or maybe you can kind of go off of that, or give some suggestions of what you would do. And maybe, I mean, we can get to like content plus events as well, because I know we're both big believers of that. But any ideas from a high level marketing strategy to get things going?
Yeah, this is Amir. Thank you for the question. Yeah, any more insights you could give us, so we're not giving just broad strokes of what we would do. Maybe we paint it in the light of dark social strategy or what we would do. So I'm gonna assume maybe you have a couple of customers, maybe you have a lot, Amir. That's where my mind goes to. What are you doing with them, right? These are your subject matter experts. And I always say any sales or marketing strategy, they can talk about the what, which is the product. They can talk about the why, which is the problem you solve, but very rarely can you talk about the how. right? How you use it day to day, how it integrates with your tech stack, how my work has changed in terms of what I was doing before and getting from point A to point B to now what it looks like. And to me, those are such golden insights that you have to be harnessing, whether it's one, you interviewing them and understanding all of that, or two, and this is where I was going with it, try and put your customers up on stage, right? Look for ways where you can create different types of programs, articles, events like this, right? Where you can bring them on and have a topic around, hey, this is how this person um, it either increased or decreased depending on what you're looking for in terms of their supply chain, right? So to me, it always starts with a problem. Um, well, what problem are you solving in terms of, okay, supply chain, right? What are you doing that's maybe a little different from the competition? What problem are you solving that got your founder to say, hey, we need to solve this issue and create a company around it? But to me, the insights start with your customers, and they often, your founder might have an idea of the problem they're solving, but sometimes customers might even say yes, and not only are you solving that, but you're solving another problem. So without interacting with them, without giving them spaces and opportunities to actually share the before and after, and giving them some content themes, I think that's one of the strongest places you can start in terms of your customers, getting insights from them, but also featuring them in your content. um, Another thing that I would add in that I'm starting to experiment now is like finding those co-marketing initiatives, or even saying, hey, I want to feature you in this article of how to debunk, I don't know, the 5 myths of your supply chain logistics. What's cool about that is you actually sometimes start to get some built-in distribution, right? Not only are people, you're quoting people, maybe they're customers, maybe they're even target accounts of who you're trying to break into, and saying, hey, I'm writing this piece, this content article, I'd love to feature you. Would you be willing to hop on a quick 15-minute interview just to get some sound bites from you? And from there, a lot of the time they might say, hey, can you let me know when you actually publish this article? I'd love to share with my network. I've had people even say, hey, I'd love to share it on our blog, right? And you're building in some built in distribution. So that's one thing. And I know he just asked another question, so maybe I'll toss it over to you, Nick. But to me, you have to figure out how to get customer insights and how to get your customers involved in your content and marketing strategy.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, we're actually thinking about this right now, and I know Arthur and I were talking about this earlier offline, but like we're doing our biggest event of the year on June 1st, and so what we're doing is we're co-partnering with some people to amplify the message. So like we're helping drive like registrations, but we also partner in a lot of ways with companies where we give them the platform for free, and the best demo for us is being able to just have people play this. Now this event is on AirMeet, and like we partnered with RevGenius. So now everyone that's on this session can experience AirMeet. And even knowing you may not know who AirMeet is, now you're being able to play with this platform, and coming soon, you'll actually be able to book with Chili Piper right in the platform. But it's going to be able to showcase and demo without us being able to do it. So it's kind of like a product led growth strategy, but like it's it's the best demo that we can give, and it's the best easiest way for our customers to amplify what we're doing. So a lot of our customers, please use examples. A lot of our customers, and I'll give you a good example. WorkRamp is one of our customers, and they do a ton of amazing events, thousands and thousands of people that attend their events, and they do these big summits. And we, whenever they do one, and this is the same with a few of our customers, we have at a minimum probably, I would say, 10 to 20 inbounds that come after that event, of people like, hey, I attended this event, all of the experiences and features and things like that were really cool. I would love to see what it would cost. And our pricing's transparent on our website. But like people come inbound when our customers do the events. So it's like if we can help our customers be successful in our marketing strategy, we're going to ultimately drive more inbound, which is going to create more pipeline, which is ultimately going to hopefully deliver more closed won revenue. But obviously, being an event platform and event led growth being so important to us, we do a ton of events. Like we do in a quarter, we probably do about 25 to 30 events per quarter. And that's both our own events. We have a couple different series. Arthur's been on them before. We do one called Inventions. We do a Power Hour one for different pieces of the funnel, like top of funnel, middle, bottom customers. And we have different outcomes that we're looking to achieve through each of these. But I think it's important to figure out what those outcomes are and what you actually want to achieve. Are you looking to just drive pipeline? Are you having issues converting your pipeline? Are you having issues converting inbound? Like what is the outcome that you're looking to achieve? And then backing into a marketing strategy that makes sense from there.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's really cool to see you guys are using your own product, and it's true. If you make your customers successful, this is kind of the flywheel that you get to, where now not only are you creating events, successful events for them that people can actually see your platform. But maybe if somebody reaches out to them and says, "Hey, we're thinking about doing an event, and we heard your events are awesome. What type of platform do you use?" And now you're like building in this customer story where they're like, "Hey, we love Airmeet. Like, you should check it out, and let me put you in touch with Nick." This is something that's pretty top of mind because I know a lot of our demo requests actually come from people booking for other vendors, right? And maybe they're on PandaDoc's side, or I don't know, Intuit or something like that. And they're like, huh, that experience was pretty cool. And they go through this idea of, I wonder what that would look like for our customers. So I think that's such a brilliant piece of like making your customers successful. And in turn, it actually helps build out this flywheel for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So let's dive into another piece here, and this is something that again I know you're a big fan of. I'm a big fan of it. So using content and I guess content marketing around events, and like how do we connect the two for our target audience that drives engagement, conversions, and sales at the end of the day. So like I know when we go to shows together or when you guys goes to show, which I happen to be at a lot of them too, like you and the Chili Piper team is out there recording content, you're distributing that content. Let's talk about, your process for that. What does that look like? What's your goal? What are your outcomes that you're looking to achieve by doing this?
Yeah, and this has kind of changed a little bit over as we've gone to these trade shows. Me and Nolan now have done this, I think, at 3 trade shows where yeah, we're flying down our head of video and creating content there. So I'll take you back to where it first started. It started at Dreamforce 2022, and part of the reason was because we needed to get creative since we didn't have a booth there. We didn't want to pay, I don't know, $250,000 to Salesforce to have some presence there, and we thought, okay, what can we do instead to really let people know that we're here without having a traditional booth and exhibiting and soliciting folks. So that's where we're like, okay, well, let's shoot some content there. A lot of our customers are going to be there. Can we maybe capture some sound bites? At the same time, there was a lot of target accounts there too, and we're like, what could we do there? So a little embarrassed to say we didn't have much of a strategy there, but just putting 2 creative folks in the room, like that's where the escalator hot take came from. We got a bunch of cool customer sound bites, and it was awesome to post them. Again, we're going back on what we just mentioned of like making your customers look good and that. And I think one thing we learned early on with that, specifically around making your customers look good, again, going back to the deposit versus withdrawal mindset, if I went in there and I said, hey, company X, I know you're a Chili Piper customer. Tell me what's your favorite feature of Chili Piper. That's very self-serving content. They might do it because they might love your product, but I'm also trying to think and build in distribution. So one of the things we've always done now from here on out is how our videos always start is by asking them to give us a quick pitch on their company and what they do for their company. That alone has probably guaranteed, I don't know, 80, 90% distribution to everybody we've reached out to. because now they can share it. They can say, hey, this is what we do as a company, and this is what I do, right? There's some, I guess, some built-in distribution, some value for them to share it, where it's not just like, hey, we love Chili Piper, and I wanted to share this clip of why we love it. So that one was pretty important. Again, of like, how do you make your customers look good, and how do you do so in a way that they want to share it with their networks? Because we know it's way more powerful if they share it to their, whether it's through their company profile or their personal LinkedIn's, than somebody like us being like, hey, look how cool it is that this company uses our product. So that was what we started realizing, was that the more we gave people these opportunities to kind of pitch what they were there for and even highlight what they do within the company, we were getting some good built-in distribution. As we came along, we started recognizing that this was fun content and people seemed to like engage with it, but were we really talking about what Chili Piper does, or even getting strategic around the point of, okay, maybe I am starting to think a little bit differently and hearing it from other experts. So now we try and look at it as like, what is top of mind right now? And I'll give you a couple of examples, right? Everybody in 2023 is turning towards their customers. Budgets are being frozen. People aren't maybe buying net new technology. It still exists, but I'd say a lot of people are now going back to their customers, and maybe these are customers that they haven't necessarily been in touch with or ignored the past couple of years, and all of a sudden it's like, holy crap, this is our only lever to pull in terms of expanding the company. So we knew that that was very top of mind for other folks, and we started to develop a theme around it, right? Even just asking people, hey, how are you looking at your customers now? What new strategies are you starting to do? Is this team expanding? Um, and this kind of ties in a little bit with Chili Piper's product. We're looking for threads of like, what's going on in the economy right now, and how do we tie it back to something that we know we hit on, and being pretty subtle around it, because I don't want it to sound like a pitch for Chili Piper. Which then gives us very like topical type of content that we're hoping our ICP starts to engage with. I think another key element of this strategy, and I'll pause here because you might have some questions. We wanted to, actually, you inspired a lot of this, Nick, in terms of the physical to digital flywheel, right? And most events have like a shelf life of 1 day. You prep a ton for them. People might be prepping a quarter out to make sure everything goes well. Your booth value prop and what you want to do. Maybe you outline some attendees and target accounts that you want to penetrate. After that, nothing else really happens. So you were the first one to get me thinking about, okay, how do you start to create maybe some content at events so that you can even extend the life and your investment in these trade shows? A lot of the time you're paying 30, 40, 50, even upwards of 100 grand to be there just for 1 day. So how are you extending the life of that? And we recognized that nobody was really doing this, and having our head of video there and being able to edit the videos almost in real time and posting it, then we started to want to almost curate this event experience for our audience. And they would look to us to be like, okay, I'm not there, but I guess I'm in a way participating through watching this content. And it's been so interesting to hear how I've heard people say, hey, you guys are like the ESPN for content at events, just trying to curate this experience. We've even been called out when me and Nolan are walking down the trade show floor, and they're like, hey, aren't you guys the guys that do content at events, and you post it on LinkedIn? And he actually ended up going and getting this VP of marketing to be interviewed. So that's, I guess, how it's evolved a little bit. I don't know if I answered all your questions, so let's dive into it.
Yeah, no, you definitely did, and I think that's important. That's actually like, it's funny about the ESPN thing because it's so true, and it's like actually it's such a compliment because it's again, it's easier when you have, Nolan or whoever, say we're at a company, your video person with you. For me, it's a little bit harder because it's usually just me
Yeah.
solo that goes to these, and like I have to send it to our video person and like get it back. So I can't post it in real time.
Yeah.
But to be able to post that in real time is such a game changer and like such a leg up over anyone that's doing this right now. It is interesting because I mean, the last event that I was at was B2B MX in Scottsdale in February, and like that's probably the last time I saw you.
Yeah.
And like you are seeing more and more companies or people that like are taking this approach too. It's funny. I'm seeing like more and more, even like on LinkedIn, I'm seeing more and more people just starting to post like interviews, videos from trade show floors, and I'm just like, it's so I mean, I love to see it because I think that so many people have the wrong mindset when it comes to trade shows and just sitting at their booth and like waiting
Yeah.
for people to come by. And it's like this is a great way to extend that shelf life. And like we call it the grade eight. When we do an event, like any type of event that we do, we have 8 different distribution paths that come from the event. So like we have clips, we have a blog, like we have audio pieces. Like there's eight. We have 8 different things. I'll have to find the slide. And I'll send it to you or the picture. But it's so interesting and like it's actually a really great way to do it because we know in our framework is in place where any event that we do, we just know like boom, we have 8 different pieces of content at a minimum that are going to come from it. And then it's like, all right, cool. We know exactly where we're going to distribute these. Sometimes we do it a little bit better than others. We recently developed the framework a little bit more, but we're trying to push the envelope on like what is event led growth, and like this is a big piece. Distribution of content is a huge thing within event led growth because again, it's putting the attendee first, it's putting that experience first, and so I'm 100% bought in on it. And I love that that's everything that you're doing too. The only other question that I had, and I know, we're coming up on time too, and I don't know if there's any other questions or anything like that, but when it comes to the content from events and like what everything that you're doing, how are you measuring that? I mean, I guess self-reported attribution, but like, is there anything else that you're looking at specifically?
Um, I think right now we've had enough qualitative indicators to let us know that this is working from a branding perspective. I also think now it's compounding on top of itself where people are recognizing us. Maybe they're wanting to come by the booth and things like that. So I wouldn't say we're like measuring it for the purpose of like direct attribution response. In some ways, I think we're just looking at it from a brand awareness in terms of impressions, engagements. Did this resonate? Are we getting people to kind of comment? And I know in some cases we're now hosting that asset, that video piece on YouTube, and that's been a huge focus of our strategy. So we're now looking at okay, engagement on LinkedIn, is that transitioning to YouTube? And I think we're getting a little bit more creative to see these referral paths to see if it's now ended up in like a website visit. So that's like the next evolution. We're recognizing that this is resonating with our audience. We're looking qualitatively at who exactly is commenting and engaging with us. And I think as we start to expand that, now we're going to look at, yeah, kind of referral paths of if they engage with this content, what was that next step that they took? Um, so yeah, that's how it's not a great way in terms of
Yeah.
it. But I also think to your point of what is the goal of this, we're not creating it necessarily to say, hey, I don't know, did 5 videos and we booked 5 demos from it. We are maybe starting to get to a place where we're testing it as, I hate to say ABM because you have to have much more of a strategy, but let's say like a targeted account strategy, right? If they happen to be exhibiting with us and we do content with them, we do arm the SDRs with that piece of content, and they use it in their outreach and saying, hey, I saw Arthur Metz, I don't know, your VP of marketing, your head of sales there, and then going into the pitch there. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I don't know. It's not a perfect way to do it, but I think the goal of it was more for extending the shelf life of our events, which I'd argue that it's definitely done that, and we've even been recognized months down the line of like, yeah, I saw your coverage of Dreamforce, or yeah, I remember you guys doing this thing at SAST or whatever it is.
I love that. That's it's definitely important too. It's Speaking of, and I know there was there was another question, but what events are you doing that are coming up that are in person? Like, I'm just so if people want to see this firsthand, it could be a great example for them too. Just so people know from a timing perspective.
Yeah, the next one that you'll probably see content at events come from is the Forrester Summit happening in Austin, June 5th to 7th. So yeah, you'll see me, I think one day, and this one's interesting for me too, Nick, because I won't have Nolan as my crutch there. So I'm trying to get
Oh,
creative in how I'm going to capture content there. Buddy system always works. So I know another company there. I'll shout them out now. Mutiny, Stu from Mutiny. We're gonna kind of help each other film content there. But we are also looking at working with an agency from a perspective of maybe even capturing stuff outside or a nearby studio to have a little bit more of a longer form versus just typically these trade show interviews are like 1 to 3 minutes. So we are looking at capturing master SaaS episodes, which typically range from like 10 to 20 minutes in length. So that's the next event that you'll see content come from. Um, but yeah, this might be not up to our usual par because we won't have the man behind the camera, Nolan McCoy there.
oh man, I wish I was actually going to that. I'm unfortunately not. Although who knows? Maybe I'll find my way there. And if so, I can help film some content for you. But before we wrap things up, there was one. I just want to kind of get to this one last question because it was kind of I guess it's important to this conversation. Is are events just branding or effective way to generate new business? And I mean, I feel like that's kind of obviously it's a great way to generate new business, but like from an ending perspective to wrap things up, what would you say? Everything that you're doing from an evangelism perspective, from a dark social, from a community, from content and events, are you driving new business at the end of the day?
Absolutely. Like, and what I'll mention too is, of course, we're looking for the demos that have booked, and we're looking at the show rates of that, and seeing what came directly after, and especially if we had a booth presence where we tried to solicit business. So we're measuring that. But I think what's really interesting is we also take a long term approach and we measure basically all of our field marketing events function in 2022, and I can tell you we've driven over $7 million in pipeline. A lot of that has, I think, close to 2 to 3 million in closed one. And this is where our average contract value is like 10,000. So we're getting a lot of folks interested in learning more about Chili Piper. Now, I haven't differentiated between trade show booths or offsite activations or some of these executive dinners, but even when we look at our trade show strategy, in some cases, we actually do three of those types of events where we'll throw an intimate dinner, we'll throw more of a larger 200-person networking activation, and then we'll have the booth. And I'm sure even having those touch points baked into the trade show where maybe one company only gets one touch point across the booth, we're trying to bake in several different touch points so that if they come to a trade show, they'll definitely have come across Chili Piper in one form or fashion. And then to answer that question that came into the chat, I think each have different goals, but I don't like the crutch of saying if the marketing investment didn't really result in anything, oh, at least we had brand awareness. To me, it's like, how do you take that a step further? Like brand awareness with specific target accounts. Are you actually going up to them and having conversations? Or are you saying like you mentioned earlier, Nick, just standing at your booth and hoping that, oh, we paid X amount of dollars and this is going to be brand awareness. And at least the target companies that we want to talk with at this trade show are seeing our booth. That's not enough for me. Can you have almost, I don't know if this is a like direct brand awareness where you had a conversation, right? And they know where you're talking about, they know where you're from. So I think each event serves different purposes. Our offsite activations, those are definitely more brand awareness, right? We're not plugging Chili Piper, we're not plugging any of those partners. We're just trying to create a space where people can get together with their peers and relax after a pretty heavy trade show day. So we're not necessarily hoping that, oh, 300 people attended based on our metrics, we should get 13 demos. We're not measuring that event for that purpose. But we're looking at, hey, for the demos we booked at the trade show booth, did this person show up to our event, right? Did they show up to this executive dinner? And then looking at it through a year lens of saying, okay, we committed this much to our field marketing program. What came out on the other side? So hopefully that
Mm.
helps in terms of the question around, is it just branding? I think there's different main goals that you're looking to achieve with each event. But even within that, there's definitely avenues for more direct conversion. Or if you're taking a longer term approach, you'd be surprised at how something you threw 6, 8 months ago, they might trickle through the funnel. And one of the first brand engagements was through your event. So hopefully that helps. Do you think about it differently, Nick?
No, I don't. I think about it exactly the same as well. I mean, I think it's definitely something where, I mean, it's all about, events have like a long tail type of thing too. It's like, you're not always going to see a ton of like deals come within like a week or two, post event. But who knows, 6 months, 7 months down the road, if you make a memorable impression off someone, and you don't have to have a trade show booth to do this, but if you as a person and as an individual, which goes back to like a people first go to market mindset, which is a whole nother conversation. Like if you think about that way, and then you take it and you say like, look, all of a sudden you're going to start to see people progressing through the funnel and you're going to be like, okay, cool. And I was on a call earlier this morning where we were going over for the majority of our closed one business that happened in Q1. I think it was like 70 something percent came from an event that we
Wow.
did. Like it was crazy because we were trying to justify one, asking for more budget, but two, like showing that event led growth. And if you do it the right way, and we're trying to be like that authoritative type of person for it, can result in actually major business and be a majority of the pipeline and revenue that you drive. So it was super interesting to see that. But no, I'm a 100% believer, same exact way. But yeah, that's that. So I want to kind of throw it over to you. One final thing, anything that you want to leave people with today? Where can people go to find you? I know where to go to find you. You're great. You answer my texts all the time, so thank you. But if people want to go connect with you, where can they connect with you? And what's one final piece of advice you'd give around this whole dark social and community piece?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of where I'm most active, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably your best bet. In terms of my final thought, I think this really captures this whole dark social mentality, because I think people are always going to look for that direct response, short term win. But by taking this long term approach of deposits instead of withdrawals, that you sometimes you don't even have to wait that long. Just by having that mindset, people are gravitating towards that. They want to be around people that don't have ulterior motives or aren't always self-serving themselves. They want to give back to the community. I think if you take that approach in your dark social strategy, where it's not always about, hey, where can we plant something in a community and see what comes out the other side? Maybe where can we just plant a free resource or like a value added resource that isn't even tied to our company, but later down the line, people remember that and maybe want to engage with us. So think about it from a perspective of what can you deposit before you withdraw? And I think you'll be pretty successful in terms of your marketing strategy and how you approach dark social.
Love that. Amazing. Well, Arthur, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you everyone for joining Marketing Monday. And yeah, find Arthur and myself on LinkedIn. Always reach out. We're happy to help any way I can. And thank you for joining. And we will catch you next week on my video went out, but I'm still here. We will catch you. We will catch you on Marketing Mondays next week. Have a great